Think about that. And that may be the only glimpse of the kingdom of heaven someone you run across might see before they're taken from this earthly journey. That is the kingdom of heaven. Okay, so you might say, hold on, time out. Come on, Chris, is this really possible? How can we ignore our grief? Okay? How can we ignore life-threatening events? How can we ignore chronic illness? How can we ignore broken relationships? How can we ignore the genocide in Darfur? How can we ignore the slaughter of innocent lives, men, women, children in Rwanda? How can we ignore the extermination of millions of lives under the regimes of Stalin and Hitler, as history tells us? How can we ignore the killing fields of Cambodia? How can we ignore the atrocities that are occurring throughout Africa? How can we ignore how suddenly I lost my own dad back in 1995? How do I ignore losing my favorite dog in the world a few months ago? How do I ignore this horrible cold? I can hardly function without coughing at times. How do I move forward knowing that chronic illness claims the lives of thousands every day? How do we ignore the ethnic tensions and mass murders under the ill-sighted leadership of the former infamous Soviet president? How do we come to grips with the HIV epidemic that has claimed hundreds of thousands of lives across the African continent? We are in a world, it's stained, a world stained with conflict. We have passed the responsibility of knowing good from evil. That is our responsibility. We are now tasked with the responsibility of dealing with it. But that's not entirely true, is it? You see, I think God has taken on the responsibility of dealing day to day with the problems we create. Does he not? I mean, think about that. So again, I ask, how can we appreciate his perspective? How can we soak his energy into our souls to where we would reflect this godly perspective to others, joyfully sharing with those around us despite our afflictions? How do we do this? How do we ignore our afflictions? I've asked Tori to come up. We're going to do a song together. The song is entitled God Bless the Broken Road.
Hoping I would find true love. that God bless